a bipartisan bill to enact a school bell-to-bell smartphone ban for all California schools. Research clearly shows that excessive smartphone use leads to negative academic and mental health outcomes, including reduced focus, increased depression and anxiety, and lower overall social and emotional well-being. Schools that have adopted bell-to-bell smartphone bans report improved academic outcomes, especially in disadvantaged communities, as well as a reduction in cyberbullying and other disciplinary problems. California should join New York, Texas, and other states in enacting a statewide bell-to-bell smartphone ban. I'd like to turn the podium to one of the joint authors of AB 1644, the author of the 2024 law to require school districts to adopt policies related to smartphone use, Assemblymember Josh Hoover.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Assemblymember Muratsuchi. It's really a pleasure being here today with the Assembly member as two people who have really tried to put this issue at the forefront of supporting students and their education. Interestingly, in 2019, when the bill encouraging districts to pass policies to reduce the use of phones during the school day, I was at that time on a local school board in my community in Sacramento County. And we were one of the first adopters as a local board of a policy to reduce phone use at the local level. And when you talk to our principals, when you talk to our administrators, when you talk to our teachers and the families in our community, it had an immediate impact on the well-being of our students, both academically, their mental health improved, their social engagement improved, and it was so obvious to me at that time that this is something that we needed to do statewide. When I joined the legislature a couple years later, I was very pleased to work with Assemblymember Muratsuchi on the Phone Free Schools Act just a couple years ago to do that very thing, to require school districts to pass policies on reducing smartphone use, a bill that is going to go into full implementation this year. But while I think that bill was critically important, I think it is time for us to go one more step further and join the many other states that have taken action to introduce full bell-to-bell prohibitions of smartphones during the school day. It is only going to have an increased benefit for our students, for our young people. As a parent of 3 myself, this is something that is really critically important to me, and I'm very grateful for the work that my colleagues are doing on this. Happy to support and look forward to moving this bill through the legislative process this year. With that, I would like to introduce another one of our joint authors on the bill, my colleague from Long Beach, Assemblymember Josh Lowenthal.
Moment, students are pulled back into their feeds instead of engaging the people and the environment around them. And the research on what excessive screen time produces is consistent. Worse mental health outcomes, more behavioral issues, lower academic performances, and disrupted sleep. And I say this not only as a legislator, I say this as a parent of kids that are in public schools right now. When I text my children, when I text my 10th grader during the day, I get a quick response every single day, despite the cell phone policies that they have in place right now that are not bell-to-bell. And in having conversation with my kids afterwards, I learned that in between every class, they're quick to get their phone. They're taken immediately into a world that distracts them away from the things that they have at hand, and it is problematic. AB 1644 responds to this by establishing uniform, bell-to-bell, phone-free policies across California schools. Schools already have tools students need. They have laptops, tablets, textbooks, libraries. There is no instructional gap being created by removing smartphones from the classroom. But keeping phones out of schools addresses the symptom, not the source. The deeper issue is that young people are spending hours each day on platforms that were not designed for their well-being in mind. This is an issue that is very close to my heart. And I'm proud to be working with Assemblymember Muratsuchi and others on a bill related to cell phone usage. A bill I authored, AB 1709, which would raise the minimum age of social media and create an e-safety commission. Together, AB 1644 and AB 1709 can help young people put down their phones and be more present, both with their studies and with each other. I'd now like to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Martin Hilbert from the University of California. Oh, okay. I'd now like to introduce my colleague, a trailblazer on e-safety issues here in the legislature and throughout the United States, Assemblymember Buffy Wicks.
Thank you. Thank you, Assemblymember Lowenthal, and for all of your hard work in this space. And I want to thank Mr. Muratsuchi as well for leading this, and also Mr. Hoover, who I don't, oh, he's right there. Okay, Mr. Hoover. You know, and I think what you see in these lawmakers is first and foremost, we are parents. We are parents before we are Democrats or Republicans. And we are grappling with the problem that every parent grapples with right now in this country and globally, is how are we ensuring that we are creating a learning environment for our children that is enabling them to put their best foot forward. And right now, the pervasive use of cell phones in our schools is damaging their ability to do that. And so I view this as a common sense bill. Every parent knows our kids should be spending more time learning, playing, and engaging with each other, and less time scrolling and posting on their social media platforms. And so that's what this bill is really aimed at doing, is ensuring that our schools are there for learning, not there for scrolling. That is not what schools are designed to do. And we've seen many other states pass aggressive bans to eliminate the use of cell phones on campuses. And in places where we have the data, we see test scores increase, we see attendance increases. Some of the districts that I've spoken to in my own district say they have a lot of concerns because what happens on social media then happens outside in the classroom. So if there's violence and threats that happen on social media platforms, the kids take that offline. And so they also view this as a way to potentially reduce violence as well. So these are some of the things that we are concerned about as parents. There's a number of bills we are working on this year towards that end, including regulations around chatbots, the age gating bill, and many of us are working very collaboratively towards that as a complementary package of bills that are aimed at making sure that our children are protected and that they have the best environments for their learning. So I'm proud to be a joint author on this bill and to work with my colleagues, and I'm hopeful we can get it through the legislative process this year and onto the governor's desk. Oh, did I take that? I don't think so. I think someone else took that.
Okay. We would like to next welcome a subject matter expert on this topic from the University of California, Davis, Professor Martin Hilbert.
Thank you. I'm, as Assembly members, first and foremost, a father of two 10-year-old girls in Davis, California. I'm also a professor in communication computer science at the University of California in Davis, where I study the benefits and the harms of digital technologies. I want to start by saying there's not a shadow of a doubt in my mind that the future is digital. Our children are growing up in an increasingly pervasive digital reality. But when it has become clear in the 1900s that the automobile would be the future of transportation, we did not hand a semi-truck to an 8-year-old or a loaded tank to a teenager, especially while there still weren't any clear routes on the street. What matters is how we guide our children into the digital futures. Last month in Los Angeles, Meta and Google, two main providers of applications on mobile phones, were found, and I quote, likely to be dangerous when used by a minor in a reasonably foreseeable manner, end quote. And additionally, to having you find the maximal damage in California courts, it was shown that they acted in malice, oppression, or fraud. So they were not only found to do harm to children, but to have done so in malice. In New Mexico, Meta was found liable for misleading consumers about the safety of its platform and endangering children. I've been involved in these lawsuits as an independent expert, and having reviewed both public and internal company documents on these issues, it is very obvious that these are not neutral tools. These are products built by billion-dollar teams to maximize children engagement for profit. Public education is asked to compete with some of the most sophisticated attention capture systems ever built. Teenagers receive a median of 273 notifications a day, and roughly 1 every 5 minutes during school hours alone. Studies find 43 minutes of active screen time during school day breaks, meaning even time meant for recovery and socializing, an important part of education, is being consumed by what California's legislation, SB 976, officially calls addictive feeds. That's law-approved language for social media. Survey after survey show that 80 to 90% of certified school staff identify distractions from learning as a main problem after our currently valid policy, and 70 to 80% say it creates excessive teacher burden. This is why bell-to-bell bans have become the norm already across the country. A recent survey found adoption rising from 60% to 74% only last year, and 86% of principals in schools with restrictive policies endorse it for safety benefits. That is why it is proven inefficient to implement the current plethora of conditional regulations, including the soft limitation of mobile phone use, which is allowed under our current Free Schools Act in California, or any kind of ban that is riddled with exceptions. I always make the analogy, imagine a policy that allows smoking in a restaurant between courses, but not during eating, which is the equivalent of the current cell phone limitations allowed. And now compare it to a ban of smoking in restaurants. The difference on the policy level that we talk about here is a seismic shift in the operational enforcements inside schools for teachers and for principals. One is a binary, self-enforcing. The other turns every waiter into a monitor police forced to task who is smoking, when, where, under with exception, and the same holds for mobile phone policies as they are active right now. A conditional restrictions creates a combinatorial explosion of decision points. Which period, which teacher's permission, which app, which locations, which moment transition. Teachers spend hours a day trying to chase down students, and they're not police officers, they are teachers. Every boundary becomes negotiable on top, and adolescents are developmentally wired to negotiate boundaries. Worse, such as waiters that depend on the goodwill of the clientele for tips, teachers depend on the students' goodwill for learning and cooperation, so anything but a bell-to-bell ban is a losing proposition by design. As a parent, of course, I also understand the desire to communicate with children, especially in older grades and high school. They maybe need to coordinate in the afternoon. And in communication science, there's the theory called media richness theory, which says every communication channel needs to fit its purpose. If I want to coordinate after-school pickup, a bunch of fixed-line phones in the hallway, which are freely available and doesn't cost anything to operate them over IP, can do that job. You don't need an addiction casino in your pocket to fulfill this communication purpose. And also in emergency, it has shown that children with cell phones in an emergency situation are at the highest risk because they're distracted, overloading the communication channel, and putting themselves in risk in these emergency situations. Of course, special conditions and accommodations need to be considered. By the way, the bell-to-bell stat for mobile policy is only a start, as some of the assembly members say. Artificial intelligence is becoming omnipresent, and they're especially not safety tested for kids. So Chromebooks and other screens are becoming the next frontier. In closing, I have no doubt that the future is digital. But how our children get there matters. Our responsibility is to ensure that they arrive there healthy, educated, socially developed young stewards of our common digital future, not as children whose attention is exploited by commercial algorithms during the very hours that we use public funds to educate them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor. Next, I'd like to invite up Selma Cooper, representing Distraction-Free Schools, California.
Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. I'm here today as a mother and a licensed marriage and family therapist. In my clinical practice, I listen to teens and families every day, and they are struggling. They're not broken, but the environments they've been placed in is overwhelming them. One of the most consistent themes that I hear is this: they cannot get a break. There is no pause, no quiet, no moment in the school day where they are simply allowed to be present with themselves or with each other. Because their phone is always there. In their pocket, on their desk, calling them back into a world of comparison, distraction, and pressure. A bell-to-bell phone policy is not about punishment, it is about protection. It protects the student who is already struggling to focus, who wants to do well but feels pulled in 100 directions. It protects the child who is socially anxious, who might otherwise retreat into a screen instead of slowly, bravely learning how to connect. It protects the student who is being excluded or bullied online during the day with no escape. As a mom, I can tell you, kids are hungry for real connection. They want to laugh together. They want to feel included. But when phones are present, something subtle but powerful changes. The quality of social interaction is affected. We have confused constant access with support, but real support looks like boundaries. It looks like creating an environment where kids can focus, where they can build relationships, where they can develop the skills they will need to thrive. Schools should be places where children are free to learn and grow, not places where they are tethered to the pressures of the digital world every minute of the day. This policy gives them that freedom. This policy levels the playing field, because right now, students who struggle the most with impulse control, attention, or social challenges are the ones most impacted by unrestricted phone use. A bell-to-bell policy doesn't single them out, it supports them, quietly and universally. This is a mental health issue. This is an equity issue. And it is a common sense step forward. As a clinician and a parent, I urge you to support a bell-to-bell phone policy, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Our kids deserve a school day that belongs to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am very pleased to invite our next speaker, representing TechNet, leading voice for technology and innovation in the state of California, is Jose Torres, Deputy Executive Director.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Again, my name is Jose Torres, Deputy Executive Director with TechNet. TechNet and our member companies believe technology, when used thoughtfully, should expand opportunity and improve lives. This also means understanding when it doesn't belong in the classroom. AB 1644 strikes the right balance by giving districts a clear, practical path to create a more focused learning environment, while also preserving appropriate exceptions for students and health needs and legitimate academic uses. We commend Assemblymember Muratsuchi and his bipartisan colleagues for their leadership on this issue. California can help set a strong example for the nation in managing the role of consumer technology in schools. AB 1644 is a meaningful step forward, and we urge the legislature to advance it without delay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, very proud to have representing all of the students. Thank you very much. We have students from throughout the state of California that have come out for today's press conference. But representing Generation Up is their Director of Policy, Bihan Bardwaj.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Bihan Bardwaj, and I'm representing Generation Up, abbreviated as Gen Up. And today we stand, all of us here, in strong support of Assembly Bill 1644. I would like to start by saying that a policy can only be as good as its implementation, and though we've seen groundbreaking work in the phone-free schools legislation area championed by some of the legislators over here, some of the schools that are implementing these policies are just doing the bare minimum. California is yet to pass a singular universal mandate, and as a result, under current law, under the new laws that are coming up into required to be enforced by schools, implementation of phone restrictions is highly heterogeneous, and only some schools are taking the initiative to fully and effectively remove distractions from classrooms. And because of this, implementation and efficacy vary widely across our state. Some schools have taken bold steps to fully remove distractions from the classroom, but many others, like my own, have not. In my experience, many of the policies that have been put into place meet the minimum requirements of the law without truly fulfilling its intentions. Phones may be quote-unquote restricted, but ultimately they remain accessible, present, and distracting. And the reason that all of this is so important is that physical distance is required to create psychological distance. No matter how many phone laws we pass, until California mandates a universal bell-to-bell phone ban, students across California will be irreversibly affected by the systemic facilitation of distracted, disconnected, and dis-enabling learning environments. I understand that a universal mandate can sound rigid. However, as a student, I would like to say that this is precisely what we need, because social media is more than an individual issue that affects schools and school districts individually. It's a social infrastructure, and if California wants to attack that social infrastructure, wants to make sure that social infrastructure is not inhibiting learning, we have to treat it holistically, we have to treat it universally, we have to treat it as a state, we have to make sure that all students in California equally have the same sort of restriction such that the social infrastructure is completely taken care of. I know many critics of this policy will say that what do students think of AB 1644 and how it will affect our lives, and the students are here and we're saying what we think. We strongly support AB 1644.
Thank you.
Last but not least, representing also distraction-free schools, Petaluma School Administrator Chris Knight.
Thank you. I'm grateful for the leadership of all the authors of this bill. Thank you for writing this direly needed piece of legislation. Thank you to my colleagues from Distraction-Free Schools and everyone here in support of AB 1644. My name is Chris Knight, and I'm a longtime math and social studies teacher, a former union leader, and a current administrator in Sonoma County. I actually started my teaching career back in 2010 at Sacramento High School, just a couple of miles away from here in Oak Park. I'm here today to tell you that when it comes to phones, the students get it. What we are waiting for is a collective commitment to leadership. The technology discussions in 2010, when I started teaching, were about smart board adoption. Not smartphones, smart boards, the ones where you would record what you wrote on them with a special pen. My first year teaching had plenty of difficulties, but phones were not one of them. Things have changed since then. In particular, the relationship of students to their devices has changed since that year. For the last 16 years, I've taught in urban schools and suburban schools, regular and continuation education environments. I remember discussions over a decade ago about how to use smartphones as student learning tools. Even through the late 2010s, many schools' phone policies went unenforced. Now we see the truth. Smartphones are fundamentally addictive and distracting and have no place in a learning environment at any time of the day. I used to tell my East Bay Area students, there are thousands of the brightest, most highly paid minds in the world, some just a few years older than you, working long hours over that bridge in San Francisco. All they want to do is figure out how to get you to spend more time staring at that screen. My students were smart. They understood what I was saying, but they felt powerless to do anything about it. I had a different story I would tell my union members. It is a fundamental change to your working conditions that you have to compete with this device, where students have access to all their friends, all their memories, and all their music that's ever existed sitting in their pocket. I don't care how good you are at your job. That's going to make it much harder. Yet all too often, the battle against phone addiction has fallen to individual teachers, union leaders, and administrators. When people leave, policies leave, and students and staff are left worse off. AB 1644 is an opportunity for the California legislature to take the burden off the backs of individual teachers and administrators. It's simple. Smartphones are harmful enough to public education that they have no place in a K-12 learning environment. The students get it. The teachers and administrators certainly get it. We all understand it, so let's do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all of the speakers and everyone for joining us today. I'd like to see if anyone in the media has any questions for any of the speakers.
Yeah. Hi, Tommy Katzberger from Politico. I see you guys have bipartisan support for this bill. You have the Assembly Appropriations Chair here. You have TechNet, which is really rare for a tech regulation bill. So like, you've built a lot of support, but this has been, it's been held in the Ed Committee twice. Like, what's the holdup?
So the bill was originally scheduled to be presented today, but it is my understanding that the bill will be heard next Wednesday at the Education Committee hearing. The Education Committee and I have had several discussions. One of their concerns is that with the Phone Free School Act that Assemblymember Hoover was the lead author on, that school districts are currently in the process of developing policies, and so it's a concern about the timing of this legislation. However, I want to emphasize that 10 states, at least 10 states, have adopted statewide school bell-to-bell smartphone bans. California should be leading on this issue, especially when we have such a, as you pointed out, a broad coalition of support from students to parents to TechNet and many others. And so, Mr. Hoover, would you like to add?
I think you covered it.
Okay.
The committee analysis also seems to call for limiting the bell-to-bell ban to K through 8. And the way I understand it now is it would apply K through 12. I guess, do you have any plans to limit your bill to K through 8, or is that a non-starter for you?
We're having productive conversations with the committee. I think all of us here, and I would invite anyone that wants to add to my comments, but we all recognize that the need is probably the greatest in high school for a smartphone bell-to-bell school ban. The committee has been raising concerns related to extracurricular activities for high school students, after-school employment, a variety of reasons why students, as well as their family members, have grown accustomed to having the convenience of having smartphones. As the professor indicated, there are other ways of communicating to make sure that we are addressing their communication needs. But we're trying to emphasize that for many of the reasons stated by many of the speakers, we need the bell-to-bell ban for all students, not only for academic, social, and emotional purposes, but also in terms of the enforcement challenges that, for example, the professor talked about. When we don't, when we have a patchwork of regulations, I think Vihan also pointed that out.
Yeah, it seems like you're in a pickle though, because the committee, it seems like it's pretty clear, at least in the analysis and its recommendations. So, and it sounds like you don't want to budge on the high school bit. Do you see, do you have a plan to convince the committee to let you continue with imposing this on high schools? And if so, what is that? What's the compromise you're willing to make?
So, one idea that we're discussing is to adopt, is to follow 10 other states across the country, including states like New York and Texas, to adopt a statewide TK through 12 school bell-to-bell smartphone ban, but to allow school districts, after they conduct public hearings and solicit community input, to adopt their own local policies that districts throughout the state are currently working on under Assemblymember Hoover's legislation, to if not ban, to come up with restrictions on smartphone access in high schools. And So, we're hoping to convince the committee that having the statewide bell-to-bell ban as the default, but to allow school districts, to consider adopting their own local policies that are currently being developed pursuant to the 2024 law, that would be, a reasonable compromise.
And with that, that flexibility, would that only be for high schools, but the bell-to-bell ban would be for K through 8?
I think, again, want to invite Mr. Hoover if he wants to join us, but yeah.
Well, I would just say discussions are ongoing. I think we've all been having communications, and that's sort of why things have been delayed a little bit, is because these are not, right, this is an important thing to get right. And so continuing to have these discussions sometimes just takes a little more time to get the policy right. And so we'll continue to do that. But I just wanted to emphasize too, on the high school point, that this is why we really desperately need community groups too, and parents and churches and schools to really help us cut back on the pervasive use of smartphones in all aspects of young people's lives, right? Because one of the challenges that has been presented, and I've noticed this in my kids' own lives, is that there's a well-intentioned reason that, sports programs are reaching out to kids on Facebook, and churches are reaching out to kids on Instagram and saying, here's your schedule, here's the events we're doing. They're trying to meet kids where they're at. What we need to do is get kids off of those platforms and really encourage these community organizations that there are other ways to communicate with kids other than these spaces, because it really does create that excuse to continue needing smartphones in every aspect of our lives, and we definitely need to get away from that.
I'd like to also invite Professor Helbert.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for bringing up the high school. I do think that is extremely important, and as the Assemblymember said, that's where it's most needed. And I think the question is not so much the age. There will be different communication needs and solutions for different ages. But as I try to allude to, we're kind of like in the early 1900s, and we still have we introduced the car right now, and the streets are still full of horses, and we have no idea what we are doing right now, and that's where we're at. So I think for me, the basic principle is you have this school that is financed by public funds for education that needs attention. Now, what do you allow into that space that competes for that attention? So now, if you put everything in and then try to take the other things out, that doesn't work. So it's basically, you create, first of all, a silo around where you have these public funds, and then you see who you invite in. And the current mobile phones, we talk about Instagram and YouTube, but that is just the beginning. 2 weeks ago, an audit came out from all large language models, that's ChatGPT and Gemini, and for child safety, and it's staggering. ChatGPT 4.0, out of 10 conversations, 9 fail for grooming the child sexually, and grooming and manipulation. 9 out of 10 conversations. Now for Claude Opus, it's only 1 out of 4. So how can it be 9 out of 10? So which of these technologies do we invite into the space where we use our public taxpayer money to focus these kids on? And I have no doubt there will be AI tutors who are perfect for education. There will be AI agents perfect for education. But which ones of these do we allow to be used by taxpayers' money and which ones not? So having mobile phones in there, which is basically the one and then there will always be new ones. There will be new AIs and whatever. Which ones do we allow in? And there will be some. But right now, it's not clear which ones are which. At academia, we are auditing them, and what we find is appalling. And getting mobile phones out at this point, privately owned mobile phones, is just the only operational policy in order to get ahead of the flood of more AI agents that we're about to see.
Yes, sir.
Assemblymember Muratsuchi and Hoover, he's leaving. You did mention that 10 other states before California, and this state should be leading in that category. Just want to know, what did it get to this point to say, hey, we're kind of behind on this, and when did we recognize these issues so we can put forward to a smartphone bans?
Yeah, well, California's a big state, and our education governance is very decentralized. We defer to local school districts to make a lot of the policies that impact students on a day-to-day basis. So we're always trying to strike that balance. but you know, I think this should be one of those exceptions, and that's why we're all coming together to you know, to say that California needs to join these other states that are already ahead of us, especially as you know, the innovation state, as we have TechNet here represented, that we need to strike that balance between taking advantage of technology with protecting our kids. And that's, the data is clear that excessive smartphone use, especially at school, for all the reasons that we've been talking about, academic, social, emotional, you know, the enforcement challenges. Those are all compelling reasons as to why we need to adopt the statewide ban.
And my follow-up question and last question too, obviously, you know, we have some young minds in here that are, you know, really, you know, close to this situation and like to see something there. What's your thoughts about, you know, this representation that is here today, want to bring awareness to this problem?
Absolutely. You know, I'm so proud and appreciative of all the students that are here from throughout the state. You know, I'm sure I don't know if anyone wants to volunteer on sharing any personal stories of you know, the impacts of smartphones at schools.
You have the author of the bill here.
Please.
Okay, please come on up.
Hi everyone, my name is Elise Choi and I am a high school junior from Orange County, and I'm one of the K-12 policy directors at Gen Up. But I think from my perspective as a student who has grown up in a digital world we had smartphones and social media since we were in middle school, and now going into high school we have AI and new technologies that are rapidly growing every single day. And I think, in my opinion, regulating technology is super important. That's why this bill is extremely important, because of its effects on students both in between classes and during class. But and also, I think, from my perspective as someone who's interested in journalism and media literacy, the impact of digital technologies is huge on students. And so we need education as well as regulating technology in teaching students how to think critically and develop safe digital habits and how to use it in a healthy manner, because technology can be used in great ways. But right now, schools are requiring students to use technology and sometimes even AI without teaching them how to use it correctly.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much to everyone for coming out today, and thank you to all of the speakers as well as everyone for joining our press conference today.